the part where Peter promised to do anything for us. I wish we had recorded that.
Well, now we've got that on record from you repeating it. So
That's
we'll make
true, we do,
do
right.
it.
Okay, good. So Peter, yep.
And Melanie, we're going to need to be able to share slides.
See, I fixed that on the other meeting, but not on this meeting. Let me fix this. I think, is it telling you you can't?
Yeah.
Okay, let me try. It says one participant can share at a time. Okay, here we go. All right, I think we're good now. Is it working?
Yes.
Cool.
Super.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. We're really happy to be here. Thank you for hosting us. Today, we're going to give you a brief overview update of the Anthropology Career Readiness Network. It's a network that began in May of 2021. We now have 3 co-chairs, Riall, Jennifer, and myself. And we also have our ACRN intern with us, Zahra Malik, and she is coming from Calgary, so she's out west just like most of you all are. Some of you may know that some people refer to ACRN as ACRN, and many of us now call it that. So I'm going to flip back and forth probably between ACRN and ACRN. But here on this slide, you see both the mission and the vision. So the mission is really the purpose. What are we trying to do? And our hope is that we are preparing anthropology students for careers outside the academy. And then our vision is something far broader. Our vision is that anthropology programs, no matter at what level, embrace practice in their teaching and in how they prepare students for careers. So that gives you a general sense, I think, of where we are grounded and in the context in which we're working. And we have basically 4 different sections for this presentation. Each is pretty short, and each one of us will take one part of it. So the first topic is ACRN's workbook, and Jennifer will tell you about that.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead to the next slide. So Peter kindly already set us up a little bit on this one. So our career tools for Anthropology Career Readiness Network workbook was published just a few weeks ago on August 23rd. To date, we've sold around 300 something copies. So I think that might be a, smash hit in the academic world. But this workbook was really envisioned as a way to make the tools that we have available on our website more accessible and easier for instructors to use in their classes. It's intentionally made to be like letter size paper. So if you do want a photocopy, it's easy to do that. As well as it features the tools that we have on our website under that For Students page. Is there a next slide, Elizabeth? Yep. So the For Students section of our page is categorized into 7 different sections, and these sections were actually developed using user experience research with a group of students to really think through how do we organize and categorize all of these great resources that we put together. So the book mirrors these categories exactly, and it takes you through sort of that process of a career journey. So, really ideating, thinking about the potentials of your careers, how do you gather the sort of skills and network that you need to find a job, and then the actual process of getting a job, and then how do you use the anthropology at work afterwards. So there's 39 tools in here, as well as exercises to help you apply those tools. So it's really intended to be something that either you could assign individual activities from in a classroom setting, or it's something that if you're an individual, you could work through on your own. And as we said, it's available just for $10. I think Amazon, I don't know if it's still going, had a special with the Kindle version where I think you get like credits for their Kindle program or whatever. So it reduced the cost down to $7. And some examples of the tools that we have in here. We have a section that's around exploring different careers. So all of these tools cover the careers that are available within all of these different sectors, as well as the skills that you learn in anthropology that you can apply. And then we have ones that are really focused on developing individual skills. So for example, we've got a great one from Helen Fisher, if you know her, on public speaking, and other ways that you can apply these methods. So I think, you know, if me personally, as somebody who has been a practitioner for 10 years, I'm still getting a lot out of this workbook. We obviously didn't write all of these. We had 26 different authors contribute to these, as well as dozens of reviewers. So all of these tools have been peer reviewed, and it's really a great sort of collective effort and a resource. And it's something that we're going to continue to iterate on. I've got 2 more tools I need to edit for Elizabeth this weekend. I didn't forget. And it's something that if you see an opportunity or a gap or something that you have knowledge in that you'd be interested in writing a tool, please reach out. We would be happy to have you included. And we're already ideating what a second edition might look like.
Great.
Any questions before we move on? I'll also add under the for instructors section, those haven't been put into a book format, but we also have other resources for instructors that are in this sort of like easy handout guide format.
Jennifer, before you move on, it would be helpful if you just give us a brief specific example from one of those subsections.
One of those subsections, I think probably the first tool we have is one of the most powerful. So it's the what can you do with a degree in anthropology? So this tool really walks through, you know, what do anthropologists do? You know, where do they work? And what does the job market prospects look like for anthropology? And this tool is really imagined, we were calling it the parents tool for a while, where it's a resource that you could share easily with a parent or anybody else that's kind of concerned about your future career in terms of the direction that you're going studying anthropology. So that's one I would maybe check out first. I could probably pull up our website and share what that looks like. But all of these tools were originally imagined as just individual, like 1 or 2 page handouts. Some of them have gotten a little longer, but they're supposed to be quick hits in terms of accessing information in a very quick, plain language format, if that makes sense.
Peter, I could jump in and give you
Yeah.
one other one that I like particularly, and that is it's a fairly elaborate tool. You know, when we developed these, we did this on the basis of research that we'd done with younger practitioners. We asked them a whole bunch of things, and most of what we wound up doing was as a response to what we was hearing from them. But one of the things that we did, which turned out to be fairly elaborate, was a tool. I think it's like 4 pages, isn't it, about how to make decisions about going to graduate school.
Oh yeah.
Which I think is incredibly useful for students. Because at least in my experience, a lot of students are very unclear about their options and about the implications of some of the choices that they make. And this is a very nice tool for that. So that's another good example, to my mind, of how this can be helpful.
And, you know,
And again,
academia
we
is
have
a
another
workplace.
moment here, since I'm sort of the facilitator just for this first part of the program. Melanie is the overall facilitator for our program today. I was very pleased to see, of course, that diversity, equity, and inclusion is in there. I, by coincidence, am working on this currently in Colorado. I find it very interesting, very challenging, and in some ways controversial. How do you folks cover that?
Sure, you want to pull it up? Shall we?
Yeah, go ahead and get on the website. So I believe Lucy and is it Missy?
Yeah,
That
Missy.
one.
Yeah.
And they both have, I believe, a consulting firm together that they do trainings around DEI. And I think one of the things they emphasize is that the language has been shifting around DEI. So that I think is actually in anthropology's favor. So a lot of companies are switching more towards having departments of culture or stuff around culture building, which kind of, I think, skirts some of the restrictions that have happened at like the higher level when it comes to the words DEI or diversity specifically. Yeah, so this is a great example. So we have sort of an introduction at the top here. We break down the terms. We provide some background on the area, explaining how it situates within different organizations. And then, explaining what goes into the work, and then the type of training that you need to do this work, and really explaining how anthropologists fit in this space.
Oh, that's terrific. Thank you for showing
Yeah.
us that.
Yeah, so, we have tools on all the ones that you saw listed on that slide there around those different careers, but we're also continuing to add to that as well. I think we've got another one coming around design. Teresa, do you have a question? Oh, I still can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Put your question in the chat.
Mhm.
While she's doing that, let me just jump in again. We're planning to do a similar book for instructors. Okay, and so it's going to be a very different set of materials, because it's not about what can you do with a career in anthropology. That's for the students. This is for instructors, and the focus is going to be how can you make your curriculum in your department more practice friendly? How can you move it in the direction of career readiness? There are lots of ways to do that, and we are assembling. We've got a bunch of tools already. We're going to write some more, we're going to develop some more, and then we're going to put those out between covers, and that will be a book for instructors.
Oh, thank you, Teresa. Yeah, AI, actually, we had an email exchange right before this around having one on using AI. So yeah, definitely, Elizabeth will get your name down and reach out.
Okay.
Teresa, would you provide your email in the chat?
Sorry, my cat was attacking my foot.
Anything else you want to say on that, or any other questions?
Yeah, so you can find all of these tools on our website currently, but yeah, definitely check out the book if you want something that's a little easier to page through.
I'm going to talk about client-based class projects. These are projects that we started the first year that we did. You know what? I'm hearing an echo. Is there a way we can fix that?
Let's make sure that everybody is muted except for you. And I might be able to do that as a host as well, but if everybody could please mute, that would be great.
All right, thank you. We started these client-based class projects the first year that we were operational, which was 2021. And ever since then, we have worked with 2 anthropology professors and 2 classrooms of students each semester. The point of the projects is really twofold. Number one, it's to get the students to learn to work with each other as peers. So in other words, to give them the experience of collaborating on a project that matters. And then the second element that's very important is that they get a chance to problem solve. They are working for a particular client who has a particular problem. And those, there are all kinds of clients out there who don't know that they need anthropologists, but it turns out that these classrooms of students with their professors are doing a bang-up job giving them information that is vital to how they operate. At the end of the semester, after the students have completed their projects, they develop a final presentation. They invite the client to come into the classroom, usually via Zoom, but sometimes in person, and then they deliver that presentation. All of the logos here are the schools that we have worked with, 2 of whom we have worked with twice. So that would be the University of North Texas and the University of Delaware. The projects take 3 different forms, and all of the details related to the classes can be found under the instructor page on the website. But if you were to group the projects, you would find that they fall into 3 buckets. The first bucket are research projects, and these are the ones that we are most familiar with as anthropologists because that's a lot of what we do. And you can just read down quickly through the bullet points. Those are all of the different projects that students have worked on. The second column is a different kind of project. These are identifying anthropology case studies that have been considered by others to be highly successful. And the students will first search the literature, and we give them some suggestions, and then they pick the case studies that they really want to develop, usually into some form of media. So in one case, they created, Jennifer, help me with the word for Instagram.
Like a reel?
I guess it's a reel that shows you exactly what the case was about, and they do the design work, they choose the content that they want to include, and then they made it suitable for Instagram. In another case, the college was having a poster show, and so the students created posters of the case studies, and then people from the college came around and talked to the students about the work that they had done. So they had photographs and they had key points. The third column represents the third type of project that the students have worked on. And it's both blog posts and we also have podcasts. And you can see some of the blog posts that are listed there.
Elizabeth, before we move on, again,
Yes.
excellent overview. Thank you. In column number 2, of course, successful anthropology case studies should be of great interest to practitioners, students, and other colleagues. I'm
Yes.
delighted to see that food security recovery was one of those, in part
Yes.
because I'm currently advising a student on that very topic who is helping us on a project in Ethiopia.
Okay.
So have you found that perhaps even just if a person at another university, the person I'm advising pro bono was at Regis University of Denver, have you found that if a student, for example, at Regis University were just to go in and, so to speak, extract the food security material in that way without necessarily being that familiar with ACRN as a whole, that would work? Or do they need to be more familiar?
Sure.
Do they need to be more familiar with the overall network?
No, they can just go in. It's under the instructor page. And one of the sub pages is called class projects. So then they would go in and they would see these 3 types of class projects, and then they would search under the successful anthropology case studies. That particular food security one was done by Adam Coons.
Oh, yes, I'm familiar with Adam.
Yep. So you can tell them that. In fact, you could probably look at it. The original article or chapter that Adam wrote is there. And then the material that the students put together is there, along with the syllabus that the professor used for the class.
Wonderful. Thank you. Because you can imagine that many students eager to tap the network realistically won't be able to tap the whole network. They'll need to pick and choose things out of the network that would benefit them.
Yes, right.
Yeah, and I would say our goal is that all the resources we have on there are accessible and stuff that you could come in without like a deep knowledge of anthropological jargon and be able to understand and follow the information. And yeah, it's very much a choose your own adventure.
And we did that very specifically in response to what we were hearing from practitioners. We asked practitioners at one point, so what weren't you taught in graduate school? What was missing? And a whole bunch of them said, nobody ever explained to us how to explain anthropology to people in our workplace, right? And, you know, the assumption that I think we often make is that, well, you're supposed to talk about the 4 fields and about relativism and so forth and so on. It turns out, as we drilled down, they don't want to know about that in the workplace. What they want to know specifically is, how can anthropology help us do what we're doing here? And so for that, we thought case studies are the way to go. Giving these to students so that they can see, this is how an anthropologist approached a problem. This is what he or she did. These are the results they've got. I mean, you're familiar with the STAR method. And so these things are structured kind of in that way to show students how anthropology helps solve a problem. Because that's what people want to know in the workplace. They are really not interested in much of the rest of it, if you see what I mean. So that's why we did that particular set of projects. And I think that going in and picking out one of those case studies is exactly what we want students to do. You see what I mean? So that when the time comes, they can say, here's an example. You know, it's not my example. It's not a project I did, but it's a project I know about. I read about this.
Yep. The 2 projects that we're working on this semester are the last 2 in the first column, how Latinx community exchanges information, and that is in the state of Delaware. And then the second one is unhoused youth and their experiences in developing their own businesses. They're working with an entrepreneurial center in their town. That's all I have to say about class projects. I'd like to turn it over now to Riall.
Oh, you're muted.
Yep, I
You're
know.
mute.
Yeah, sorry. I'm still not good with this. I'll talk very briefly about this. This is our DAI, our Departmental Advisory Initiative. We've reached out to various departments and they invite us in to consult with them. We have a 2.5 day regime that we sort of do with them. And the purpose of it is to explore things that the department would like to do in order to make themselves more career relevant, more career friendly, and they'd like us to help them with it. Elizabeth, if you go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about this, how this works. So it's designed to build capacity. We've got 4 schools so far. We've done 2. We're about to go on Monday to Texas A&M and do it there. And then the week after, we'll be at Westchester University outside of Philadelphia. And the idea is to help them figure out how to build their capacity in very specific ways for the promotion of career-ready skills and knowledge. And we do this through a 12-month period where we get into a relationship with them. We have 2.5 days with them, quite intensive, where we do a bunch of work. And then they and we make a plan together for the next 12 months. And we check in with them at quarterly intervals to see how they're doing. But they set their own goals, they set their own sort of timetables, and we encourage them, we help them, we work on resources with them and so forth and so on. We do a lot of that other work via Zoom, of course. And it really has worked out quite well. If you can go to the next one, I'll show you an example of how this works. So on the right-hand side of this slide is the program that we're going to do at Texas A&M starting on Monday. We start the day with an opening session, and it's a discussion with the faculty. Now, are the entire faculty there? Well, at a small school, yeah, most of them are. I mean, at Delaware, for example, I think we had just about everybody in the room. At IU, where we were just recently, no, it's a bigger department, but we got quite a few of them in. And through the course of the 2.5 days, almost everybody came in, spent a little time, and went out. And so it's a discussion about, well, what do people need to learn in your program to be more career ready, and how can we do that in this department? So the first day is a sort of a general discussion where they've done some pre-work. Elizabeth has given them a set of assignments to write about. And one of the things they have to do is tell us what 3 things would you like to do? When they figure that out and write it down before we get to campus so that we can get started talking to them about that. Interestingly enough, some of that changes, right, as the discussion proceeds, which is very nice. It's kind of the way we think it should be. So based on the first day, the second day is pretty intensive. It's an entire workshop. We sit down and we hammer this stuff out. We review what we've done. We often will talk to a group of students, but in the afternoon, we start making our plan. And then there's usually a final presentation of this either on that day or on the morning of the last day. One way or the other, we get our agenda out, our goals out, our schedules out. Everybody shakes hands and we go away. We found this to be extremely interesting. And if you go to the next slide, I can talk just briefly to wrap this up about what I think we're learning in this process. It's been an eye-opener for me. Lots of things happen in this. The departments are ready for this. I mean, they have to ask us, and so they're halfway there to start with. But as the discussions proceed, we're finding that the faculty in these schools are learning an awful lot from one another about how courses are being taught, about what students are saying to people in courses, about various things that happen. And some of that is relatively unknown to some of the other faculty members who are sort of very interested in their own, subject matter or their own sets of courses. So there's a very, very interesting interchange that is going on, and it is enlightening for just about everybody. The second thing that we've noticed is happening is that through this process of discussion, these faculty members are learning a great deal about their own campus and its resources. This may be surprising, I don't know. But in both cases, these departments were relatively uninformed about their own university's career centers and what was available. And it turned out, because we asked them, would you invite people to come in and sit in on these sessions with us? And it turned out that these places were terrific sources of not just ideas, but also programs, and in some cases, money to help students with career preparation. And so, we got into some typical faculty discussions about, well, I'd like to do internships, but gosh, it's a lot of work and I have a lot of research to do and I don't have time and nobody's paying me extra, blah, blah, blah. At which point the guy from the Career Center raises his hand. He said, we do that. He said, we've been doing it for years. We can do it for you. Oh, and by the way, if it turns out to be an unpaid internship, we can pay the students. And everybody's jaw dropped. They all turned around and said, really? Dang. So we're having a great time with this because they're learning about this, that, and the other on their own campuses. And it's not just career centers. They're learning about what the business school does, okay, to prepare people. They're learning about what the engineering school does to encourage group work and so forth and so on. So it's a real eye-opener for people who've been relatively, sort of, I wouldn't say sequestered, but I mean, they've been relatively distant from their own campuses.
Riall, if I might ask you this.
Yeah.
When you're there working with examples of these departments, are you sometimes there in person or sometimes there via Zoom?
No, we're there in person for the start. The 2.5-day starter is physical. We're there.
Terrific.
So at IU, Elizabeth was there, I was there, and Jennifer was there.
Terrific.
And then things happen via Zoom for the next 12 months, right? So we don't go down again and again, but we have quarterly meetings. We just finished one with Delaware actually just the other day. The other thing that happens is they learn about what's going on other campuses, because as the discussion proceeds, both they and we know a lot about examples of things that have happened on other campuses where people have approached practice in different ways. So that information gets exchanged. And the other thing is that the 2.5 days gives them a chance to plan together, to reason together, to exchange information in a very unthreatening, very sort of unhurried way, which I think they've done a magnificent job of. I mean, I'm used to people arguing in faculty meetings. There's none of that. There's a constant seeking of how can we solve this problem? Who can contribute what to it? It's very, very interesting to watch how this develops. I couldn't be more pleased. So they're working with each other collectively on these problems and coming up with pretty darn good solutions. The other thing, the last thing I would say is that it also surfaces some of their concerns. And I will cite you 4 concerns that have surfaced over the last 2 of these sessions, which are sort of perhaps special to these campuses, but I think every campus has some concerns. And so we don't deny the concerns. We talk about those as well. So one concern was experiential learning. What the hell is it and how do we put it into our classes? People were very explicit. They'd like to do this, but they admitted right up front, we have no experience with this. How can we do this? And will it get in the way of our other concern, which is that we want to keep the focus in our classes on critical thinking? Does experiential learning in some way displace or compete with critical thinking in our classes? That was a concern for people, and I thought a very legitimate one. And then there were the usual uncertainties and fears, let's put it that way, of changes in the upper administration that they were afraid were going against them and sort of leading to bad outcomes for their department, as well as the entire nationwide political climate that they thought was tending toward the sort of anti-academic and anti-intellectual. So those things all surface. Now, those are not things that we can solve, and they recognize that, but those things creep in. They're contextual elements that come into what they're talking about. I think a lot of these departments feel that if they're not under threat today, they're likely to be under threat in the future. And so they're seeing this kind of effort as almost fireproofing themselves to some extent against an administration who comes and says, you know, all you're doing is producing unemployed people, which is not the case. It wasn't the case to start with, but they are working with us partly, I think, out of some concern for that. Anyway, I'll stop there. We've learned a lot, is what I'm trying to say. I've been delighted, and I hope that they're learning half as much as we are, because this has been really, really an interesting experience. And I'm looking forward to Texas A&M and to Westchester, and probably next year some more. Done. Thank you.
Okay. Zahra. Whoops, I got Priscilla's name. Got to put Zahra's. I'll just take Priscilla's name out.
All right. So the last part that I'm going to talk about today is the World of Work blog. So you can go to our website, and there is a link that I will put in the chat just here. And so these are basically blog posts from practitioners, academics, instructors, students, new grads, anyone who has any sort of experience with anthropology, has knowledge that they'd like to share, and also just, you know, like be able to express how they write, maybe have a case study that they could use onwards when it comes to, you know, their job applications. They could pull it up and say, hey, I have this blog post right here, and take a look at my work, my writing. So it's something that we find is very collaborative. I myself have gone through the blog posts and given it a read and found people that I'm like, this person is working in a field that's very interesting to me, and I would love to connect with them and learn more about their experience. And I relate to something that they've talked about, so that's a starting point. So let me just add the link to the chat, and please do explore. It is something that we encourage all of our new volunteers to do, all of our interns to do, and we have a bunch of practitioners in the US and Canada, all over the world, who have written for our blog. So yeah, that kind of concludes it. You can see our recent blog posts. So one of them is by a recent volunteer that joined JJ, which is how do PhDs in anthropology navigate non-academic careers in today's job market. Another one is by Matt Arts, who's also worked on the UX side of things and worked on our website for ACRN, which talks about how anthropologists can navigate careers in emerging technologies. He recently came out with a book called MTech Anthropology, and he talks more about that as well, and the MTech landscape, the key skills that anthropologists can bring to it, and so on and so forth. So I find it to be a very good career tool just in general, something very good to reach out and be able to connect with people and network as well.
Zahra, would you be so
Yeah.
kind, since I was delighted to see you have the recent blog post on high school students' interest. A couple of high school students have chatted with me recently about anthropology and my involvement in applied anthropology. They're usually eager. Could you say a bit more about that particular one? I'm glad to see it's there.
I personally have not read the one on a high school students just because I think it's been a while since I've been in high school. So I recently graduated with my master's. And so I mean, I would say it's a good starting point for people who are interested in learning more about the field. Just like we mentioned and Jennifer mentioned in our book, like people really struggle with understanding what anthropology is. Even just telling your parents like, hey, I want to go into anth. My mom still to this day does not know what anthropology is. And I still have to tell her like, no, I mean, that's not, okay, this is how you explain it. This isn't psych, this isn't. So stuff like that, I find that can be really confusing if you are interested in the field, if you're trying to convince someone that yes, it's worth pursuing, that this knowledge is worth it, and that it will I'll come out of it with a career and a good job at the end of the day, which is what, as someone who has gone through high school, like I'm sure everyone has had, their starting point is always, what is my future career going to look like? Where am I going to go once I'm out of university? And so maybe I think this could be a really good post for people who are considering going into uni and taking some anthropology classes. Doesn't have to be a major, be a minor, it could be anything, but just dipping your toes in and discovering what the field is, and how it's different from other social sciences.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we have a couple of blogs that hit on working with high school students. I just dropped one in the chat that you might find interesting, and you can see if it's reflective of your experience as an applied anthropologist, working with high school students. So yeah, if you have any insights that you get as you, do these various, mentoring, relationships, definitely reach out if you're interested to write a blog. I think the topics are pretty broad and open. It's kind of wherever you have that inspiration. So everybody on this call, if you have an idea for a blog, like please reach out. I know Priscilla is always looking at getting some more in the pipeline.
One of the tools that we'll probably develop, Peter, for this companion handbook for instructors will be suggestions for how to boost enrollments in anthropology at the undergraduate level, because this is a concern. I mean, we're really talking about preparing anthropology students for careers in practice, but that assumes a quantity of raw material to work with. And some of these schools are experiencing drops in enrollment, which are quite, distressing to them. They're quite worried. And in some cases, it's a natural fall off. And in some cases, it's done by the university itself. I think at IU, they were explaining that the way in which people select majors nowadays is making it very difficult for people to pick anthropology as an incoming first year. Most of the academic departments that I've ever worked with do not regularly go out and canvass high schools to talk to students in high schools about what an anthropologist is and what they do. Consequently, what they've mostly seen when they get to university is Indiana Jones movies or,
Jurassic Park.
late night reruns of Bones or something. And that's okay, I guess, but that's pretty thin stuff to be, going ahead with. So there's lots of ways I think that we need to reach out to high school students. And I don't know if there's one right way to do it, but we're gonna put some ideas together. And if you have ideas to contribute to us, this would be a good way for you to get involved with what we're doing. Because that's a big concern. Elizabeth, you told me one time that overall enrollments are down by, what was it, 10, 20%? I mean,
Yeah.
nationwide in anthropology. It's
Yep.
it's really quite, it's quite worrying.
And I think one of the big things about anthropology that people miss is it's so versatile. It's one of those things that if you study it, you can pivot into so many different careers, and it kind of unlocks potential, because it's like you get a degree in accounting, you can pretty much just do an accounting. And if they do mass layoffs, you're kind of, up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. Whereas anthropology allows you to have that flexibility. And I think if we can explain that to students in terms of like, this is something that allows you to explore more than one career and doesn't lock you in and can actually support you if you do have like a clear direction. I think we just need to work on selling it, if it makes sense.
Yeah, so at this point, we're probably running a little bit over the time. But if anyone has any thoughts or questions, we could take them, and then just have a couple of other slides at the end, which are just informational.
Just want to say it's totally okay if we run over some. We can
Okay.
compensate with the break time and out
Okay.
of the PowerPoint as well.
Can I break in for a second? Dave
Please.
Stevenson.
Yes.
First of all, briefly, I have been a member of this organization since its inception for about 50 years.
Wow.
I'm both a lawyer. I practiced internationally as an expert witness in Indigenous peoples' human cultural heritage rights cases,
Yeah.
as well as an applied social cultural anthropologist. I have written down probably about 5 pages of notes listening to you talk. So I'm not going to take time to go through everything. I have heard, I know of certainly Elizabeth and Riall, and have great respect for you. And I've known Peter for over 50 years. And so I know both the good things and all the bad things about him, which I won't share with you, but I can tell you there's very little bad things, very few bad things. Anyway, briefly, having heard Elizabeth speak about this topic before, and I know the project she's been undertaking, the work she's been undergoing, the one piece of encouragement that I would add or supplement and to tack on what Riall said earlier, I think the key ingredient to success as practicing applied anthropologists in today's world is an understanding of the importance of multidisciplinary connections, networks, and work, both within academic departments at the university level, as well as professionally across societies and cultures. And that's, as I said, I could probably speak for about 3 hours on that topic. But we've been, a lot of what you've been talking about is what anthropology can add to whatever it is they're doing. But what we have to understand is that in order to do that, we have to communicate and understand and listen to what can be offered to anthropologists to enhance what we do. And it's quite significant because in today's world, I'm actually living on a college campus, and I know multiple people involved in various applied projects, and the interdisciplinary scope is huge, and it's absolutely vital to survival in whatever we do as anthropologists going forward. So that's my short and sweet message.
Yeah, that's a really important point that you're making, and it's one that has gotten a lot of traction with places like National Science Foundation. I served on a National Science Foundation committee, or not committee, a project for about 6 years. And I was the social scientist on the project, along with a bunch of engineers. And now that model seems to be going throughout National Science Foundation, where you've got to have a social scientist at least on your career. So that's an opportunity for anthropologists to work with somebody that's not another anthropologist.
And it confronts the reality that most workplaces, you're not working with other anthropologists, you know, you're going to be working with
Exactly.
data scientists, programmers, you know, all different types of backgrounds and working
You
across
know,
that difference.
excuse me for interrupting, Jennifer. The flip side of that is I just heard a great presentation by an applied anthropologist who was kicked out of academia quite abruptly, and she's quite willing to talk about that. Suzanne Hanchett. And she's had a great career as an applied anthropologist. But one of the comments that came up during that discussion was that in multidisciplinary enterprises such as NHS projects and NIH projects and so on, World Bank, you know, AID, whatever it is, everybody says, okay, we need an anthropologist. Anthropologists are absolutely vital. Why not more than one anthropologist? Why not a team of anthropologists? Not only do we need to connect with multiple disciplines, but they need to recognize that there's multiple facets to anthropology, and a team of anthropologists can be that much more valuable potentially than one or two token anthropologists in any project.
Sure. Nice.
The one thing that I have been thinking about, I mean, this project, when Elizabeth invited me to come in and help her do it, I thought, wow. And I did it mainly because I thought I'm going to learn a lot by doing it. And have I ever? But I've started learning stuff that keeps me up at night. So it's maybe not an unalloyed good. But one of the things that I'm concerned about in our discipline is that anthropology is very good at teaching people to think about things and to find things out. It's really not very good at teaching people what to do with what they learn. In other words, how to get stuff done. And so all of us who have worked out as practitioners know that one of the big differences, huge difference between the academy and work on the outside is that on the outside, people expect results. They want stuff to happen. And you don't get away with saying, well, on the one hand, this, on the other hand, that. That's not how it works. And I think we need to start teaching our students how to get things done. And so Elizabeth has been talking to people who teach methods courses and saying, if you're teaching them how to gather data and how to analyze data, fine, but why not take the next step and teach them how to use the data to put together a plan or a proposal or a project? Because that's how they learn how that stuff works. The other thing that keeps me up at night, which is a different problem, is that most of what we've been doing either implicitly or explicitly is focused on graduate education, because master's degrees are what you need for practice as a professional anyway, or PhDs. But what about all those undergraduates that major in anthropology, get really fired up by it, and then are let loose onto the world? And, you know, as somebody commented just a minute ago, if you're an accountant, you know where that goes. It goes into an accounting job. But if you're an anthropology major, where does that go? Well, the good part of it is it goes anywhere you want it to go. But that's also the bad part, if you think about it, because if students aren't explicitly trained or invited to consider what it is they've actually learned, they are going to be at a loss once they get into the workplace. It can be so valuable, but I don't think we're emphasizing undergraduate education enough. I think we need to take better care of our undergraduates. And maybe that's already happening in some other places, you know, I don't know. But I work mostly at R1 universities, and it's not happening there. Undergraduates are basically just tuition fodder for those guys. But those are the things that I start thinking about. And I think that at some point in our meetings at SFAA and AAA, we'll probably start getting into discussions with the discipline about some of this stuff that's coming out of what we're doing, because I think it has implications for how we move ahead in the future.
This slide is just a call to any of you that would like to get involved to a limited extent, or maybe even to a great extent, in what we're doing. But there are 3 relatively easy ideas here if you are interested. One would be to write a very short review of the Career Tools for Anthropology book. You can write it right on Amazon. the same page, just scroll all the way down to the bottom and you will see where you can post a review. The same tool, the same page where you purchase the book. And then a second idea is, and there was some discussion of this, we're always looking for new how-to tools, whether they're for students for the next edition that we're going to be producing, or for instructors, which would be a totally different volume. And you know, to know what we have out there, you can go on the website and see the various tools we have now. And if you have an idea for something that you're interested in and you think others should be interested in, that's written in a how-to framework, that would be fabulous. And then finally, the last one is write a blog post, as Zahra was suggesting. The blog posts are about 750, 800 words. The key restriction is they need to be focused on careers or career preparation. But it can be anything in those categories, your reflections, you know, your experience, et cetera, et cetera. And if you want to become a member of ACRN or ACRN, you can do so just by going to the website to the contact page, and I'll automatically get your name and email and be happy to add you to our master list. The benefits of membership are pretty small. One is that you get invited to our 6 meetings a year by Zoom. We had one just this past week. And the other thing you get is on the odd months, you get a copy of our newsletter. So thank you so much for your time and your interest in what we're up to.
Well, I've been honored to be the introducer and facilitator of this part of today's program. Again, Melanie's our overall introducer and facilitator, which is terrific for today. But I wanted to thank Elizabeth and Riall, my longstanding friends, and Jennifer and Zahra, my new friends, our new friends. And I'm also so glad to see faces of colleagues from long past who I don't get to see much, like Teresa and Dave. So it's a pleasure to be here, and a pleasure to turn it over now to Melanie.